Thank you, Jacob, for the nice introduction there. And I don't have a Twitter account, so can't tweet at me yet. I've been thinking about it. So Jesse Daystar is my name, and I'll be filling in for Dr. Jay Golden. And here we go. So last year, we did a study that pretty much determined the size of the bio-based economy from a jobs and employment perspective and looked at what are the opportunities, barriers, and trends as far as where is this bio-based economy going. And that was a report that we did for Congress, and it's labeled right there. And the co-authors, Jay Golden, Robert Hansfield, myself, and Eric McConnell all played an important role in that, and Jay Golden was a lead author. So looking at, what is biobase, why are we talking about this? Traditional is no more. We've made a lot of products and fuels from dinosaurs and shells, as you can see here. But further, as we progress, as those resources deplete, we're going to be needing to make products out of new things. And that comes from a lot of different directions. Consumers and producers want these materials for various reasons that we're going to get into. And for instance, the Coca-Cola product there, the plant bottle, as well as the Ulex, is something that Patagonia is using for their wetsuits. So these are all bio-based materials. And as resources deplete, and sometimes cost does go up and down, it's volatile. However, recently, the cost of petroleum has been rather low. So that's been interesting, really. And I think in past times, when oil price went down, the bio-based industries actually declined in a large extent. But I think now, in a lot of ways, partially due to environmental perceptions and this demand for these products, it's actually sticking around even throughout this low price of oil. So it's really interesting to see that in comparison to past trends. So looking at where the bio-based products, what are they and what energy is involved with that and where do they go, here's a slide that it's a little bit overwhelming when you first look at it, but you might just focus in on the roundwood in the upper left-hand corner. You can see there the energy, that's actually the amount of flows, a million metric tons, and where that goes. So if you follow the left-hand portion down, a lot of it goes to useful thermal output, so heat, and a lot of it will go to construction and paper and packaging. So we looked at and mapped the flows that of these bio-based products, a wide range of them, where they went. And this is kind of laid the foundation for further work that we did for the report for Congress. And Brandon Morris and Jay Golden published on this and the bioresources. And furthermore, instead of the product perspective, what about a regional and a spatial perspective? Where are these things coming from and going? You can see here that's very, it's kind of overwhelming at times, but if you focus in on maybe the yellow, you can see that something from North America goes to East Asia and also to West Asia. You can kind of follow the colors and where they go. And you can see how everything is so intertwined. And when you might have an increase in production in one region, you're going to have a strain on resources, and it's going to have an effect in other markets. So it's important to understand what are the risks and how are the economies connected. And that kind of leads into why we might want to do a macroeconomic analysis of such things. So in looking at just a biochemical perspective, I'm actually a chemical engineer by trade from NC State, so go Wolfpack. So now I'm at Duke, so I have a winning basketball team, but I like NC State a lot. It's my heart. Anywho, so the production of biochemicals and chemicals has increased from 5%, and it's going to go up to around 25% in 2030, according to these projections. And that's quite a lot, and why? And we're going to get into more about why that is. And globally, right now it's around 3% and $100 billion, but that's expected to also increase to around 15% and about $3 trillion. So getting into this report in a little bit more detail now. The report downloads are listed right there. However, those are a bit outdated. I think we're now around about 250,000 downloads. It's quite a lot of reads. We were very happy about that. And there's some million impressions. That is not necessarily a read, but it's gotten in front of people for that many amount of times, essentially. So the USDA has been very happy with this as kind of a way to promote what they're doing in this space, and they felt very good about it and actually have commanded a second report in which we're going to be following up with this year. So the goals of this report were to quantify the bio-based industry from a perspective of the quantity of the goods, also what is the value and contribution to GDP, as well as what is the potential fossil fuel displacement as a resulting factor of the use of these different bioproducts, and what are the potential environmental benefits or maybe negatives? What are the things we got to look out for? And also, what are the barriers for which might exist to promoting further development of these bio-based products and increasing the market share? So we looked at not everything, but a certain select group, and that's primarily following the BioPreferred program. And that's going to be agriculture and forestry, biorefining, enzymes, biochemicals, textiles, forest products, and plastics and bottles, and packaging. We did not look at energy, livestock, food, feed, and pharmaceuticals. I think that those excluded factors are really big and really actually expanding at a great rate. However, we did not include this as the USDA wasn't really focusing in on that. And I think in future work we might get into those sectors as well. And I'd like to give some credit to the BioCenter here too, North Carolina Biotech Center. They helped us a lot in understanding what percentage of these industries is biobased. The library here, they did a lot of good work that was heavily used in this report. So I have to give a big thanks. So why are we looking at this? Why is this important? Why are we all here, really? So there's demands for this, and why are we thinking let's make more of this? And I think a lot of it comes from consumers. People want bio-based products from a renewable perspective. It's going to be renewable moving forward. And maybe they don't want toxic chemicals on their body, perhaps. A lot of that's really driving the market. So there's a consumer-based perspective as well as a business-to-business. Some businesses such as Nike and Patagonia, they have within their ethos that they are going to produce things sustainably. So they're going to put pressure on the suppliers to do this as well. So there's a multi-pronged approach here. There's also regulatory aspects such as the BioPreferred program and tax credits for biofuels and bioenergy. So it's really coming from a lot of directions. And cost drivers is a third perspective. And right now the petroleum is actually at a more of a low, but it might go back up and its volatility there. And furthermore, sometimes bio-based products, something made from a plant, is actually a win from a technical perspective and a financial perspective. There's a lot of materials out there that is just the best route to go instead of using petroleum. So some more additional drivers from the U.S. Kind of regulatory perspective is USDA BioPreferred program, which emphasizes and promotes the use of bio-based products within the U.S. government. So anything that has a BioPreferred label has to have plant-based carbon, and you can test that. They send it out. It's rather easy and pretty straightforward, and they get you into the big catalog of over 10,000 different products. So once you're in that catalog, all the government agencies, schools, et cetera, they need to buy a certain amount of those products as maybe cleaning goods or anything like that, paper perhaps, for their operations, and they're supposed to prefer the BioPreferred products. Additionally, the Sustainability Consortium, that's something that has been putting a lot of pressure on sustainability and perhaps bio-based products and some other different congressional and executive orders as well. So when looking at the bio-based economy, we measure several things, and there's one way we can do that is direct impacts, indirect, and induced. So the direct would be essentially anybody who works directly in the bio-based economy, so a farmer or a person at the refinery. Indirect would be anybody making the supply chain. So for instance, the materials to make the bioreactor. So the guy who welded it up, he's an indirect employee or job. And then induced would be when those people go out to eat food for lunch. They buy food at the grocery store, for instance. So that kind of all sums up to the total, and it's how we track the spending throughout the economy. So we use something called IMPLAN, and we looked at value added, which is essentially GDP, and employment, so that's full and part-time jobs, and also what is the industry economic multipliers, essentially when you create one job in the biorefining or bio-based industry, how many jobs do you create in other industries, whether it be welding, skilled labor, engineering, for instance. So in looking at all this, we determined that about 4 million jobs are supported by the bio-based economy, and the bio-based economy also contributed $369 billion to U.S. GDP. That's quite a lot. We were very surprised about that. And furthermore, when you create one job in the bio-based economy, you create 1.64 in other areas, whether that be the chemical producers or within the restaurants down the road. Another point here that we've actually kind of further expanded our research into is looking at local aspects. So what if you buy local? How many jobs does that create within your area? And I think within North Carolina, we have a strong agriculture system here. So, a lot of times, instead of buying something that's not local, you can buy local, and maybe it's bio-based, creating more jobs in North Carolina. So we also looked at the direct, indirect, and induced effects, as I mentioned earlier, and they're relatively level across each individual category there. And we also looked at something called location quotient, and that relates the amount of output or sales or production of these bio-based products in relation to what they consume. So if you have a location quotient greater than 1, it would represent that you are very likely exporting your goods to other places, other countries, or other states. So you can see North Carolina has about a 2.034, meaning that we heavily export a lot of what we do here. And that's just one thing. North Carolina, you know, it's definitely a big player. There's some other players out there too, and they're widely dispersed across the country. And this kind of supports that the bio-based industries are, you know, existing in pretty much all the states, some more than others. And it's not just a couple little pockets or big Midwest players. It's really a total national package. And looking further to our future report, we're actually going to do, instead of a national-based perspective, we're going to look at each individual state and understand how many jobs are related within that individual state. And we're hoping that this can give people who are lobbying some kind of leverage to understand what their economies and what their industries really, what are the impacts to the people within their state and in different areas. Looking at the U.S. growth, it's projected that the jobs are going to continue to grow up until 2020 and beyond that as well. And it's just an upward trend for a lot of the same reasons we mentioned earlier about the drivers. So part of the report was to make some recommendations. So one of the biggest issues that we had trouble with when kind of quantifying the economic impacts was understanding the NAICS codes. So that's how we track the different industry sales. And there's not NAICS codes, there are no NAICS codes for individual bio-based industries. It might be chemical industry or certain areas, but it'd be really helpful if we could break that down. This is a bio-based industry and this is a petroleum-based industry. Separate those into biochemical and petroleum chemical, something to that nature. Also, we considered that bio-based fuels, biofuels, there's incentives to produce those, and they're there to reduce the risk of getting into that market and to promote their use. So what about incentives such as tax credits or tax incentives towards the bio-based products? Maybe that's something that should be considered by the U.S. government as well. And also continue to promote and kind of cheerlead the BioPreferred program and other labels that are going to continue the increase of the sales within private and public sectors. And also we're going to create a bio-based consortium, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. And we also need to do more work understanding the implications of carbon, where it's coming from, the carbon taken in from the atmosphere. It's held in these products for a period of time, such as this desk right here. It's not out warming the environment. So what are the implications of this temporary carbon storage? And this getting kind of down the science rabbit hole, but I'm really very passionate about that, and that's really interesting. So kind of to speak back about the Bio-Based Industry Consortium, we're creating a consortium that is going to really be a way to let the industry producers to speak their opinions about what they need, what barriers they see, and how we can tailor research moving forward to really help promote bio-based products within North Carolina and the United States as a whole. So we have some big players, some national chemical producers, for instance, and some big paper industries, and a wide range of industries coming to this. So if you're interested in that, you can see me after this or contact Dr. Jay Golden. And if you'd like to see the reports, they're available at this link here, as well as a few other places. And that's about it. I'm a minute and 36 ahead of time, so I'm not holding you up. All righty.